The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses, 40,000 dead Americans.
We were young and soldiers called to dedicate our lives in the name of God and country. Do what's just, boys. Go do what's right. A hot band of brothers waiting on our chance to add one more page unto the victory dance. Here am I, Lord, send me, send me. Victory lies in the spirit of the lives of the men who died for me.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me.
This is Michael Broderick, Marine Corps veteran, actor, and GallantFew board member. You are listening to the New American Veteran on Vets on Media. Now here's Carl Monger.
Michael, thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon. Today is May 26, 2014. It is Memorial Day. I want to real quick wrap up or sum up what GallantFew is all about, as well as the New American Veteran. And then we're going to get jumping right into Memorial Day activities with a couple of guests. First, TNAV is dedicated to those who said, here am I, send to me. And we honor veterans, highlight those who have transitioned successfully, and identify resources that help veterans leverage their military experience into successful and rewarding lives after the military. GallantFew's purpose is to prevent veteran unemployment, homelessness, and suicide. We fight the isolation that leads to despair by connecting the hometown threads of our separate service into a functioning nationwide web of support. And we challenge communities to take responsibility and leadership in transitioning veterans home. GallantFew is everywhere, and GallantFew is where you are. I want to real quick say hi to my lovely wife who's sitting across the desk from me because she didn't want to appear on camera, but she is helping co-host the show today.
Hi. Boy, I don't even know what you say on radio, do you? So I definitely have a face for radio, so that's why I'm behind the camera. True. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank everyone for your service, and happy Memorial Day.
Not happy Memorial Day. We'll get to that in a minute. Honor Memorial Day. Here I'm correcting my wife. I'll probably be in big trouble later on. Thank you, Adam Bird, for letting me know the audio is great. Adam and I had a conversation a little bit earlier today, and I guess we have a lot of people that are listening to this show because we've moved up in the ranks of the shows. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Today is a day to talk about memorial stuff. We are the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. This Memorial Day, USAA salutes those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Today's show is dedicated to all those who have fallen serving our nation. I'll highlight a few today, but first, Specialist Christopher Gathercole, killed in action today, May 26, 2008, during Operation Enduring Freedom. Specialist Christopher Gathercole, age 21, was assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment at Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. He was born on October 16, 1986, and he was killed on May 26, 2008, near Paktia, Afghanistan, while conducting combat operations. I also want to say real quick, let me stand up. I'm wearing a shirt with Ranger Matthew Commons' picture image on the front of it. His mom gave that to me, gosh, a year and a half ago at an event that we were at Fort Benning. So I wanted to make sure and highlight that I'm wearing that today. A Gold Star mother posted this on social media over the weekend, and I'm just going to quote directly from what she wrote. Family and friends, this weekend is a tough one for us Gold Star families as we remember our loved ones who died in service to this country. As you are enjoying this weekend, listening to the Indy 500, having a family barbecue, or doing whatever you are doing, remember you can do these things because of those who have fought and died for our freedoms throughout history. Us Gold Stars and Battle Buddies have holes in our hearts that will never fill, but we persevere because we are proud of our loved one or battle buddy. Please do not say Happy Memorial Day. It is not happy for many of us. Thank you, my Gold Star family, for our loved one's sacrifice. May we continue to persevere one day at a time until we meet our angels. So don't say Happy Memorial Day, say Honor Memorial Day. I also want to say wow and thanks for my friend and GallantFew board member, retired Command Sergeant Major Jeff Mellinger. Jeff served as the Command Sergeant Major for Multinational Forces Iraq during the surge, and you will not find a soldier more committed and caring to his troops and families. For about the last 3 or 4 days, he now lives in Georgia, but he traveled up to Washington, D.C. area, and he has been seeking out fallen soldiers in Arlington at the request of families. He's been going, taking an image, taking a photograph of their loved one's headstone, and then he's been posting it to social media and tagging them in it. So he has probably done that, I'm going to say on a conservative estimate, maybe 100. And he's also been writing stories about some of the soldiers that he served with and lost. And I also want to say condolences because his stepfather passed away, World War II veteran, just passed away here the last couple of days. Also, on a very personal note, I want to say that I remember Lieutenant Paul Long. Paul was the first of my friends to die on active duty. He was a first lieutenant, just been promoted to first lieutenant, and he was one of the Sinai peacekeepers. Gosh, now I don't remember. I want to say it's from the 82nd Airborne that was flying back from their Sinai mission, and their plane exploded over Gander, Newfoundland on December 12, 1985. I knew Paul sheerly by luck because his last name's Long, my last name's Monger. Guess what? You stand in alphabetical order when you show up for the infantry officer basic course. So I got to stand next to Paul, and what an outstanding, fine young man. He was from the state of Arkansas, and we challenged each other all the time. We ran together. We took on weekends. We went up to Atlanta together, and it was devastating when I read his name among those that were lost. We went to Ranger School together. So he was a wake-up call for me right off the bat, what military service, what the true sacrifice of military service was all about. Memorial Day history from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. 3 years after the Civil War ended on May 5, 1868, the head of an organization of Union veterans, the Grand Army of the Republic, established Decoration Day as a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. Major General John A. Logan declared that Decoration Day should be observed on May 30. It is believed that date was chosen because flowers would be in bloom all over the country. The first large observance was held that year at Arlington National Cemetery across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., and the ceremony centered around the mourning-draped veranda of the Arlington Mansion, once the home of General Robert E. Lee. Various Washington officials, including General and Mrs. Ulysses S. Grant, presided over the ceremonies. After speeches, children from the Soldiers and Sailors Orphan Home and members of the Grand Army of the Republic made their way through the cemetery, strewing flowers on both the Union and Confederate graves, reciting prayers and singing hymns. Now, in light of this day, as I said earlier on, I'm limiting the announcements, so I'm not talking about any of the other stuff that we do. I do have a few readings throughout and a couple of great guests. The first one I'm going to call up here in just a minute. First, though, I'd like you to listen to one of Ernie Pyle's dispatches from World War II. This reading is from Ernie's War, the best of Ernie Pyle's World War II dispatches. The following is the most anthologized of Pyle's war pieces. It stands among a handful of classic World War II newspaper articles. Its terse expression of emotion and repetition of expressive detail recalls some of Ernest Hemingway's World War I pieces. The Death of Captain Waskow. At the front lines in Italy, January 10, 1944. In this war, I have known a lot of officers who were loved and respected by the soldiers under them, but never have I crossed the trail of any man as beloved as Captain Henry T. Waskow of Belton, Texas. Captain Waskow was a company commander in the 36th Division. He had led his company since long before it left the States. He was very young, only in his middle 20s, but he carried in him a sincerity and gentleness that made people want to be guided by him. After my own father, he came next, the sergeant told me. He always looked after us, a soldier said. He'd go to bat for us every time. I've never known him to do anything unfair, another one said. I was at the foot of the mule trail the night they brought Captain Waskow's body down. The moon was nearly full at the time, and you could see far up the trail and even part way across the valley below. Soldiers made shadows in the moonlight as they walked. Dead men had been coming down the mountain all evening, lashed onto the backs of mules. They came lying belly down across the wooden pack saddles, their heads hanging down on the left side of the mule, their stiffened legs sticking out awkwardly from the other side, bobbing up and down as the mule walked. The Italian mule skinners were afraid to walk beside dead men, so Americans had to lead the mules down that night. Even the Americans were reluctant to unlash and lift off the bodies at the bottoms, so an officer had to do it himself and ask others to help. The first one came early in the morning. They slid him down from the mule and stood him on his feet for a moment while they got a new grip. In the half-light, he might have been merely a sick man standing there leaning on the others. Then they laid him on the ground in the shadow of the low stone wall alongside the road. I don't know who that first one was. You feel small in the presence of dead men and ashamed at being alive, and you don't ask silly questions. We left him there beside the road, that first one, and we all went back into the cowshed and sat on water cans or lay on the straw, waiting for the next batch of mules. Somebody said the dead soldier had been dead for 4 days, and then nobody said anything more about it. We talked soldier talk for an hour or more. The dead man lay all alone outside in the shadow of the low stone wall. Then a soldier came into the cowshed and said there were more bodies outside. We went out into the road. 4 mules stood there in the moonlight in the road where the trail came down off the mountain. The soldiers who led them there stood there waiting. "This one is Captain Waskow," one of them said gently. 2 men unlashed his body from the mule and lifted it off and laid it in the shadow beside the low stone wall. Other men took the other bodies off. Finally, there were 5 lying end to end in a long row alongside the road. You don't cover up dead men in the combat zone. They just lie there in the shadows until somebody else comes after them. The unburdened mules moved off to their olive orchard. The men in the road seemed reluctant to leave. They stood around, and gradually, one by one, I could sense them moving close to Captain Waskow's body. Not so much to look, I think, as to say something in finality to him and to themselves. I stood close by, and I could hear. One soldier came and looked down, and he said out loud, "God damn it." That's all he said, and then he walked away. Another one came. He said, "God damn it to hell anyway." He looked down for a few last moments, and then he turned and left. Another man came. I think he was an officer. It was hard to tell officers from men in the half-light, for all were bearded and grimy dirty. The man looked down into the dead captain's face, and then he spoke directly to him as though he were alive. He said, "I'm sorry, old man." Then a soldier came and stood beside the officer and bent over, and he too spoke to his dead captain, not in a whisper, but awfully tenderly, and he said, "I sure am sorry, sir." Then the first man squatted down, and he reached down and took the dead hand, and he sat there for a full 5 minutes, holding the dead hand in his own and looking intently into the dead face, and he never uttered a sound all the time he sat there. And finally he put the hand down, and then reached up and gently straightened the points of the captain's shirt collar, and then he sort of rearranged the tattered edges of his uniform around the wound. And then he got up and walked away down the road in the moonlight, all alone. After that, the rest of us went back into the cowshed, leaving the 5 dead men lying in a line, end to end, in the shadow of the low stone wall. We lay down on the straw in the cowshed, and pretty soon we were all asleep.
Hi, this is Matt Eversman. You're listening to GallantFew's The New American Veteran on Vets on Media.
Hey, my first guest is author Martin K.A. Morgan. He's at the Airborne School at Fort Benning today, so no video, but I'm going to display a slideshow of images from his new book, The Americans on D-Day. Now stand by here just for a moment while I pull up the phone and give him a buzz.
Hello?
Hello, is this Martin?
This is he.
Martin Carl Monger, you are live on The New American Veteran. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, tell me real quick about Fort Benning while I get the slideshow of your images going here.
Sure. Yeah, I am just up here because I'm doing a quick course about the history of the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment here at the Airborne School tomorrow. And this is something that's being done in recognition for and recognition of Memorial Day, as well as the approaching anniversary of the D-Day invasion. So I'm up here to tell a little bit of history about the 507th to the men of the modern 507th.
Now that's a pretty big honor to be able to be there amongst what is old and what is new all at the same time. That's pretty cool.
Right, right. In fact, I'm talking to you from a building that was built in the 60s by the jump towers that were built in 1942. So there's history all over this post.
Hey, I may have bunked in one of those buildings when I went through Airborne School long time ago. Okay, so I've got images of your new book, The Americans on D-Day, playing right now on the show. And let me read real quick from the introduction to the Americans on D-Day. Martin K.A. Morgan has spent years gathering and studying the images. He has walked the hallowed invasion beaches countless times. He has dug deeply into archives in multiple countries, poring over image after image. Some of the questions the book attempts to answer: where was this photo taken? Who are the soldiers in the image? What was their mission at the time, and what happened to them? So that's a pretty tall order in your introduction to the book for you to accomplish.
That's right. It is a tall order, and it wasn't something that I accomplished easily or quickly. It's something that took about a decade. This book was 10 years in the making, and it took a lot of resourcefulness, and it took a lot of research and a lot of effort. And so the book really represents the culmination of a great deal of time spent learning how to be an historian, and then doing history about the American experience in the Second World War.
I do have to give you a heads up. My wife is here co-hosting with me today, so if you hear a female voice pop in, that's Sarah. She's looking through your book right now as we're talking, so it's always nice when I can include my wife in the show. She usually works all the time, and since it's a day off for them, she's able to join me today.
Well, great. Sarah, I hope you like the book.
I love it, actually. What was one of the biggest challenges you had, or can you tell us a story as you were looking through and doing all this research? I mean, what was one of the biggest challenges and the most interesting finds that you found through your research?
Well, I would say that the biggest challenge was definitely picking and choosing. I ended up with almost 1,000 photographs, which would be way too much to try to put in one cover. The process of whittling that down to about 450 images was the biggest challenge, because I had to chop a large number of images that I was really fond of, images that showed some very interesting aspects of the battle in Normandy, but just for the sake of brevity and in an attempt to avoid being a little redundant with some photography, I had to cut some of the stuff that I didn't want to cut. Making those decisions was a big challenge. There were some interesting finds in there. One of the great things that I enjoy of the modern computer age through the use of Google Maps is it's really now possible to figure out where things are. Normandy has changed very, very little in 70 years, and so going onto Google Maps is a totally different experience than if you were to, say, use Google Maps to look at Okinawa today, where Okinawa's undergone some significant changes. Normandy, for the most part, has not. And so it was possible to take a photograph, and with one evening and being very determined and very patient, to figure out the exact location of that photograph. And so in the section that's related to glider operations in the chapter titled From the Air, using Google Maps, I was able to sit down and pinpoint some locations of some photographs that were previously just sort of presented as out of context. Photographs that, for example, there's a famous image of a B-26 Marauder medium bomber flying over an invasion beach. And for ages, that photograph was always presented as B-26 medium bomber flying over invasion beach on D-Day. I could look down at features on the ground below this bomber, and I was, with very little effort, able to determine very quickly the exact portion of beach where it was flying over. And I incorporated that information in the caption. And what that did, that's more than just kind of footnote factoid information. In some cases, that really helped me put together a picture of the way that the battle was unfolding.
That is absolutely amazing. You know, it's funny. One of the first things that I did when I learned, I don't remember how many years ago it was, maybe 5 or 6, whenever it was that I learned about Google Earth. One of the very first things that I did was go look at the Normandy beaches and find Pointe du Hoc and try to identify terrain features of historical interest. And when you look in, of course, naturally, the very first section that I turned to in your book was covering that part of the battle. And you've identified the gun positions where they should have been. You've identified where Len Lamel located them, and I think that's absolutely fascinating stuff.
Yeah, that I think you and I probably did the exact same thing early on in Google Earth, and that is that I went and kind of tracked down some of the geography associated with Pointe du Hoc. That battle is one that's really fascinated me for a long time. That's a battle that's had some unfair treatment in the historical record. That's a battle that was featured in the 1962 movie The Longest Day. And when it was presented in the movie The Longest Day, it was presented only in part, because the battle at Pointe du Hoc, or the mission rather, is really divided into three components. Component one, which is assault up to the top of the battery position at Cliff's Edge. Component number two was moving inland and finding the guns and disabling them. And then component three were a series of counterattacks that almost overwhelmed the Rangers. And in the movie The Longest Day, they really just present component one. They show this mission of assault up to the top of the cliff to the battery position, where they found that the guns were not present. In fact, the big line that hangs in the air at the end of the Pointe du Hoc sequence in the movie is one Ranger says, "You mean we came all this way for nothing?" And it's because they moved into a casemate that doesn't have a gun in it and never had a gun in it.
And that doesn't give justice to that entire story at all.
That's right. It really doesn't, because it casts the Pointe du Hoc mission in this sort of critical and cynical light. The cynical light almost suggesting that it was complete and unnecessary. When in reality it was a dramatic mission accomplished. It was a mission that was accomplished very quickly. Those guns never fired a single shot on D-Day, and it was because of the Ranger assault. And one of the things that I was most pleased with in the book is that I have this splendid full-color aerial image that is just a direct look down. It's not an oblique image. It's a direct look down from altitude at the area around Pointe du Hoc, where I have indicated the 6 tables where the guns were located up until late April when they were moved. And then I've circled the area in the hedgerows less than a mile away where the guns were actually located on D-Day. And I felt like that was something that would really be helpful for somebody learning about Pointe du Hoc and the action there for the first time, because you can see where the guns should have been and where they actually were on June 6th.
Can you talk just a little bit about what Len Lomel did, and what astounds me is looking at the aerial photograph, the distance between the cliff and the ultimate position of the guns.
Right. What Len Lomel did was, as the first sergeant for D Company of the Second Ranger Battalion, he landed at the base of the cliffs at the point, which was a German coast artillery battery site, a position that mounted 6 French-made long-range guns. These were French guns that the Germans captured in 1940, but the Germans had moved those guns just weeks before the invasion, and Sergeant Lomel, with other D Company Rangers, landed at the base of the cliffs. They fought their way to the top of the cliffs. In fact, Sergeant Lomel didn't use ropes at all. He actually did a free climb to get to the top. And after reaching the top, having a brief firefight, the Rangers realized that the guns were not there. They then moved on to the second part of the mission. The first part was neutralize the guns at the battery position. Well, they couldn't do that, so they moved on to the second phase, which was to establish a roadblock on the D514 Coast Road, the road that runs from Vierville to Grandcamp, the road just inland from Pointe du Hoc. And in the process of establishing that roadblock, they set up a machine gun facing east and then another one facing to the west. They then armed it with bazookas, and they set up flank security for the roadblock. In the process of establishing that flank security, Sergeant Lomel, with another ranger by the name of Jack Kuhn, moved down a hedgerow line, and as they moved down the line of that hedgerow, they encountered what the French call a doublier, which is a hedgerow-enclosed sunken lane. And Sergeant Lomel, using those senior NCO instincts, looked down and saw big tire tracks in the mud. And he then went with the instinct to follow those tire tracks, and he followed them about 100 yards down this hedgerow to a spot where there were 5 guns located. There were 6 originally at the point. One of them was very badly damaged in a bombing raid. So the Germans moved 5 of them to this point, less than a mile from Pointe du Hoc, and set them up where they were very well camouflaged inside the hedgerows. And they were sitting there when Sergeant Lomel located them. And then using 2 thermite grenades, the Rangers were equipped with the thermite grenades, a weapon that burns for almost a minute at about 3,000 degrees. So the weapon is extremely effective at destroying radios or destroying machine guns. You can use them to destroy equipment so that the enemy doesn't capture it. but they're also really effective at disabling artillery pieces. So Lamel and Kuhn had 2 thermite grenades that they used to destroy, or rather I should say disable, two of the 5 guns. Then Sergeant Lamel removed sights that were mounted on the guns. He took off his M41 field jacket, wrapped it around the buttstock of his Thompson submachine gun, and then, attempting to be as quiet as possible, he crushed the sights for those guns, went back, found more thermite grenades, came back for a second time, and used the thermite grenades on 2 of the other guns. And so, with very little fanfare and with no casualties, Sergeant Lamel and Jack Kuhn, they disabled the point-to-hot guns, long-range anti-ship guns that would have been very dangerous, even from their position 1 mile inland in the hedgerows. But those guns didn't fire a single shot on D-Day, and that's because of a Ranger NCO and good instinct, and keeping his wits about him and being determined to accomplish the mission.
You have some great shots of him in the book, too, through the years when he went back there in the 60s. I think was the first time that he'd been back since the war. And, excuse me, that whole picture, I don't want to focus completely on the Rangers there, although I'd like to, but that whole section is just absolutely fascinating. And I got to know Len Lamel through the Ranger Association and some reunions a few years before he passed away. So it was a special treat for me to be able to see that. What do you think in the entire section of the book that you put together? What's the rarest section? What is the piece that most people don't know about that they might find very interesting?
I think that would be in my chapter that's titled On the Beaches, in which I have a series of photos that haven't been published before. A couple of them depicting tanks on Omaha Beach, tanks from 741st and 743rd Tank Battalion, the infamous duplex drive tanks. And the famous story is that very few of the tanks were actually able to reach the beach. They were supposed to land amphibiously and provide valuable armor support on the beach at the critical moment of infantry and engineers making the initial landings. But because of the heavy seas, the duplex drive tanks shipped water over their skirts, and many of them sank. In fact, most of them sank. I ended up finding in a private collection several photographs depicting tanks on the beach at a critical moment during the battle for Omaha Beach, shortly before 10 a.m. But in addition to that, one of the things that I was the most excited about including in this book was some aerial intelligence photography. Some of the photographs that I have in that section were taken of what would ultimately become known as Omaha Beach, but taken in June of 1943. So a year before Omaha Beach would be this bloody battlefield, American aircraft were flying in reconnaissance sorties from bases in England and rocketing down along the coast, snapping photographs. And I include a series of photos that were taken from this June 1943 aerial photo reconnaissance mission, that they're depicting the entire 5-mile length of Omaha Beach. And included in the ones that published in the book are, for example, one fantastic aerial photo shot from a U.S. Army Air Force's P-38 Lightning, showing the Dog Green sector at Vierville-sur-Mer, the area at Omaha Beach that would have the highest casualties on Tuesday, June 6, 1944. But then another photograph that I insisted on being in the book, that was another part of the difficult choice, that challenge that I mentioned earlier of I wanted to run all of the photographs, but I only had so many pages and so much space, so I had to leave some out just to fit all the best ones in. So I deleted some because I wanted to include this one that's a little bit farther down the coast to the east, so that as this P-38 shot down and thundered down the length of Omaha Beach taking photographs in June of 1943, it snapped a photograph of the area around the E3 draw, an area, what we would ultimately call it the E3 beach exit. And the area shows a little overgrown path going up the bluff, and at the base of that path are the ruins of, GIs would say the ruins of an old house, and it was actually the ruins of an old seaside orphanage. And then at the top you see some nice hedgerow-enclosed fields. And I wanted to include the area in the book because those hedgerow-enclosed fields are today the Normandy American Cemetery, where 9,386 Americans lay in state. And then the overgrown trail is this thing that we call Spaulding's Path, where Lieutenant John Spaulding of the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Division, with the help of some very dedicated senior NCOs, managed to get men off of the beach and up to the top of the bluff, one of the earliest penetrations to the bluff on D-Day. And the way that Lieutenant Spaulding did that was that he assembled the men in the ruins, what he always called the ruins of the old house, which were the ruins of this orphanage. And I love this one photograph. I hope you have it there in the book. I hope you're looking at it right now, because the photograph, you can clearly see the ruins of the old orphanage. You can see the overgrown path. This overgrown path provided a defilade. In other words, an area where Lieutenant Spaulding and his men were shielded from German machine gun fire. And it was this defilated path that allowed them to get up to the top. And I like it because it illustrates what this area would have looked like a year later during the battle, because if you go and look at that area today, it's very much different. The footprint on the top of the bluff is now the Normandy American Cemetery,
Sure.
so it looks completely different than it did 70 years ago. And then the area that is now Spaulding's Path, it has a trail that goes down it from the cemetery grounds down to the beach. And then the ruins of that old house are in an area that are so completely overgrown that you can't even tell that there was a house there at any point. And so I was especially excited about the fact that I was able to use that photograph in this section of the book, because it shows this incredibly important point in the battle for Omaha Beach, the area where men of 16th Infantry Regiment made it to the top of the bluff in that area for the first time. And I couldn't have been more excited about these aerial photo reconnaissance images because they're showing Omaha Beach in a
think my wife's found the picture here.
much like what it would look like a year later on D-Day itself.
I think this is the right one, so I'm just showing in the book, but you can see the idea of the scope of the book. It's a phenomenal work, and we're going to have to conclude the interview because I've got another guest that I need to bring on here in just a moment. But one of the things that you have done through I don't know if it was you or through the publisher, but you have made copies of this book available to veteran organizations, and we're putting out on our blog. We'll have information there on how you can order it. You can go find the book, and in the blog actually linked to Amazon if somebody wants to go and order a copy of your book. They can order it through GallantFew, and it's about the same price, but a few dollars of that comes back into GallantFew as a donation. So I want to thank you for your support of veterans, for having just an awesome piece that you put out. And are you going out to Normandy for the 70th anniversary?
That's right. I fly directly from here on Thursday over to Europe, and I'll be there leading tours on the 70th anniversary. It should be very exciting.
Now, when you get back later in June, let's bring you back on the show so you can tell us some of the stories, anecdotes from when you were there, and I know you're going to have some fascinating stories.
I'd be happy to do that. I lead several tours. I get back in July, and I'd love to come on the show again and tell you a little bit about the adventures.
We'll look forward to it. Martin, thank you. Enjoy jump school. Hopefully they'll throw you out of a plane at some point.
I hope so. Well, thanks for having me on, and thank you for your service.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, let me make sure I'm reorganized here, and I am now pop into my notes because we went a little longer on that than I'd planned to, so I am not going to play Boone Cutler's Spartan Pledge video, but at the end of the show, I will bring that back on. One of the reasons that I wanted to play it today is when you get around an event that has particular significance to a veteran, and Memorial Day is certainly one of those. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I started talking about Lieutenant Paul Long, who was my first friend that died on active duty. That can bring back some memories, and that can help push you more into that isolation mode that can lead to bad things happening in your life, whether it's overdosing on prescription meds, or it's alcohol, or it's unsafe behavior, or whatever. The Spartan Pledge is a way that we ask each veteran to reach out and connect with someone else with whom they served, and take that pledge. And I took that pledge with a friend of mine that I never in a million years would have thought that we needed to take the pledge. and we did, and it's an extremely powerful thing. So stick around all the way to the end and watch the Boone Cutler video. Okay, my next guest now is Jill Stephenson, and let me make sure that I'm operating everything correctly so I can bring Jill on the line. I think, let me see, show and broadcast. Jill, are you there? Let's see. Maybe I hit the wrong button. Jill, are you there now?
I'm here.
Hey, welcome to the New American Veteran. Jill is the mother of Army Ranger Corporal Ben Kopp, who died July 18th at Walter Reed Army Medical Center as a result of wounds suffered July 10th, 2009 in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, when insurgents attacked his unit using small arms fire. He was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and I am proud to call Jill my friend. Jill, again, welcome.
Thank you, Carl, for having me on today.
And I don't know if you heard this earlier, my wife Sarah is joining me here. She is not on camera, but you'll probably hear her chime in every once in a while.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Jill.
So I thought that it would be kind of nice to start off with any memories that you wanted to share about your son.
Gosh. Well, being that it's Memorial Day, I have to just go back to when Ben was a little boy and start out with how he first sparked an interest in even wanting to join the military. And that is talking about my grandfather, Ben's great-grandfather, who was a World War II veteran. And we were privileged to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' lake home in northern Minnesota, where I live. And there was a curio cabinet that had my grandfather's memorabilia from World War II in it. And Ben took notice of that and started asking questions. And he was relentless for a number of years with his great-grandfather in his questioning. You know, what was it like to be in the war? What was it like to be in the foxhole? What was it like to shoot a gun? And on and on and on and on. And from a very young age, he wanted to grow up and be just like his great-grandfather and join the military. And I think of that today, and how much he loved his great-grandfather so much and looked up to him and worshiped the ground that he walked on and just admired him so much. And I know that, you know, he was Ben's true hero. And when he died, when Ben was 13, it was the first death that Ben had experienced, and so he was just crushed that his hero was gone, and was very sad about that. But that was what helped light that fire in Ben's belly, if you will, to join the military.
Now, on the blog that I wrote and put out yesterday, I linked to a YouTube clip that has you receiving a painting of Ben. Can you talk about that picture? Because I thought there was a really cool story behind that picture.
Yeah, that was from a woman that lives about an hour south of here, who lost a daughter, not to military service, but wanted to honor military families in the state of Minnesota by doing paintings of their loved ones. And Shar Wisco is a wonderful, wonderful lady, and painted a beautiful portrait of Ben, and it's one of my favorites that I keep in the house here, and like to look at it.
You had talked about one of the things that you most miss is a new photograph, because when somebody's away, when they're stationed on the other side of the country, occasionally you get updates and photographs, so you can kind of, it makes you maybe feel closer to what they're doing. And if I remember right, the picture that she painted was a surprise photograph that you had never seen before it was sent to you after Ben was killed.
That's right. That's right. It was another Gold Star mom friend of mine who said that when our loved ones die, we don't get new pictures. And I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that at all before, because it's absolutely true. However, it's proven to not be true, because I have received a number of new pictures of Ben that his friends shared with me after he died. And that particular photo was sent to me in December of 2009, which was 7 months after the photo was taken and 5 months after Ben died. And the wife of the ranger, the fellow ranger who took the photo, asked me if she could send it to me. She didn't want to upset me, so wanted to make sure that I was, willing to accept the photo. And when she did, it really, gosh, it just touched me and brought so much comfort and joy, because Ben has a beautiful, beautiful smile in the photo, and it's, when you think about where he was and the circumstance in which that photo was being taken, there doesn't seem to be a lot of reason why he would be smiling the way that he was. It just, the picture exudes pure love, and I believe it was, the picture came to me around Christmas time, that was Ben's Christmas present to me, to let me know that he was okay by, how wonderfully he was smiling. There it is. Yep,
Yeah,
there it is.
I thought I'd show you that picture.
Yeah, he's in the back of a Humvee. He's in Afghanistan. We know it's probably 110 degrees, and he's probably thirsty and hot and hungry. And it was just a couple days after he got to Afghanistan for that third tour of duty.
See if I can get that picture to come up again. Wow, look, it just like went crazy on me there.
Oh.
Okay, I won't try to do that. I don't know if you saw that effect, but it looked like one of those funhouse mirrors.
I did.
I don't know why it did that. There have been a number of things you talk about Benergy. You want to tell everybody what Benergy is?
Benergy is the energy that we, and I'm saying we because it's not just me, that we experience, people that knew Ben and people that didn't know Ben, experience in seeing things that are reminders of him, experiencing things that share positive energy and that share a wanting to do good things for other people, and do good things in Ben's honor, and do good things because we are humanitarians. We're here to help each other in this journey that we're walking. And how that word got coined is one of my favorite stories as well. It was a young lady that Ben went to high school with and had moved to Arlington, Virginia, where Ben is laid to rest, a short time after graduation. And I was out there in December of 2009, the first year after Ben died, and I had received Ben's truck. Ben has a big pickup truck, and I had it back in my possession now, and she asked me what it was like to drive his truck.
Up here, so keep talking. I'm going to cut your picture. Keep talking and see if I can pull that picture up.
She had asked me what it was like to drive Ben's truck, and I said, at first I was really apprehensive to get in it. It didn't feel right for me to be in there, and then I settled in, and I felt this comfort and this safety, and I said it was like this really just protective energy that was around me as I drove, and she looked at me and she said, "Do you mean his Benergy?" I went, "Oh my goodness, yes, Benergy, that's what it is." And so the term has stuck, and everybody who knows Ben, and again people who never met him but have just come to know his story over the last 4.5 years, we talk about Benergy. And
let's see if I can get, there you go, there's the picture of his truck.
Yeah.
I'm still learning exactly how this works. So what it does is it replaces my image, so when I'm talking you get to look at it, but that is absolutely awesome. And you're still driving his truck, correct?
I am. I drove it just today, as a matter of fact.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and I had that added to the back. Obviously, he didn't have that on there, of course. But
yeah, he gosh, I wish that I had known him. I mean, it's a pleasure and a blessing to call you friend. I wish that we weren't friends, because then he'd be back. Yeah. So anyway, there was another story that I thought was pretty interesting about a birthday balloon and a particular bluff overlooking a river.
That was just this last January for Ben's birthday. I went out with one of his closest girlfriends and decided to release balloons in his honor, and I'd never done that before, but it was a really cold day, and normally we would have kind of hung out at the place where we released the balloon. And where we released it is a place called Freedom Park, and it's a park that Ben and I had spent time at together over the years of him growing up, and it just became a poignant place for me to look out over the river, and there's a lot of eagles that fly around there, and so it's become a special place for me. And So Jenny and I went out there with some balloons for his birthday, and they would not fly. The wind was not our friend, and initially the wind took the balloons and threw them down into some weeds and tangled them up, and Jenny had to climb down a hill to get them released, and then they went from into the grass below the hill to stuck in a tree. And we decided to just say, okay, we're just going to take a picture of the balloons in the tree behind us. And we turned around to do a selfie photo and took the photo and then turned back around, and the balloons were gone out of the tree. And they were nowhere in sight. Now, granted, this is, maybe 5 to 7 seconds that have passed by.
They completely disappeared.
Then they just completely disappeared, and I said, you know what? I bet they're in the picture. So we turned, I had an iPad with me, so we had a fairly big screen, and sure enough, in that selfie, the balloons were in the photo behind us. So, Ben decided to keep himself in the photo, but then disappeared as quickly after.
You have a number of stories like that.
I have a lot of stories like that, yeah.
Another memory that you'd like to share about Ben?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them. It's hard to choose them. To talk about Ben, I love the energy that he had as a kid growing up. He was so tenacious and so driven in everything that he did, and he was so loyal to his family and to his friends and to his country as he aged and graduated and came into the military. And we were always very close. I called him a friend, and I know he considered me a friend as well. And he did crazy things like Rangers did as a little boy, and I know that's it's a gene that all Rangers share. And one of my favorites that I like to tell that gets a good laugh is when Ben was about 12, he and his buddies had BB gun wars. And there was an empty field a block away from where we lived, and they took their BB guns out and were shooting each other. And at some point, Ben took a BB in the mouth and managed to hide it from me. I don't know how he hid it from me, but he was 12 or 13, and so he was a teenage boy manipulating me, and the word finally got out that he had a BB in his tongue. And I said, how in the world do you get a BB in your tongue? And he said that they were just running after each other and acting all crazy, and you can't get me. And one of his buddies nailed him in the tongue, and that BB was embedded in the side of his tongue, and he took it to the grave. I did take him to the doctor just to see, is he going to get lead poisoning? Do we need to have it removed? But because a couple weeks had passed since it had landed there, the doctor said tissue had already formed around it, and it would cause more damage to remove it. And so it stayed there. And Ben used it with girls and told girls that it made him a better kisser, and he showed it off. He showed it off. So.
Jill, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give to others who maybe have also lost a loved one, or who are thinking about loved ones on this Memorial Day? I mean, how do you cope with that loss, or what brings you maybe comfort in knowing that that you have lost your son?
I would say, Sarah, to focus on the love. That's a pretty easy answer if you ask me, to focus on the love and the joy and the fact that I had been for 21 and a half years. I don't focus on what I didn't have with Ben. I don't know what I didn't have with Ben, because tomorrow is promised to none of us. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so I remain focused on the wonderful, wonderful years that I had with Ben, the fact that I was chosen to be his mother as he walked this earth. And I'm still reaping the benefits of that today. And that he is loved by so many people. I'm not at Arlington this year. For reasons that is another story in itself. I'm just not there, and I'm sad that I'm not there. However, I'm also very happy because so many people have visited Ben. You know, if you look at the photo on my Facebook page, he has so many flowers I can't even count them. And he is clearly loved by so many people, and I'm grateful that he's at Arlington, where there's a lot of traffic and people take the time to visit. But in the loss of a loved one, focus on the love, focus on the joy, and remember all the good times, and just keep picturing their smiling faces and keep talking about them. That keeps their spirit alive.
You know, it's no surprise that Ben turned out the way he did when you look at his mom.
Oh, thank you.
You guys definitely have the same genes. That is absolutely for sure.
Thank you.
I was going to ask you something else now. Oh, tell me about the Ben Kopp Memorial Ride.
The Ben Kopp Memorial Ride is a motorcycle ride that I sponsor and have for the last 3 years, 4 years, 3 officially. It takes place at the end of July each year. This year it's July 25th and 26th. It's in Apple Valley, Minnesota, which is right next to where I live. And we have a 2-day event. Friday night we do a dinner and a silent auction and have some raffle items available. And Saturday we do a motorcycle ride, followed by a pig roast, and then we give away the raffle items. The purpose of the Ben Kopp Memorial Ride is not to honor Ben, but to use Ben's name to honor all of our veterans and our local fallen veterans in the state of Minnesota. That's what I mean by locally. And so the money that we raise stays in the state of Minnesota to help veterans charities, or charities that help our veterans and their families.
And what's the website for that so people can find more information?
That is benkopp.org, www.benkopp.org.
I'll make sure. I think I put that in the blog that I published yesterday, but I'll put it out again. And as we get closer to the event, if you want to come back on the show and talk about that, please just let me know. You can come on anytime that you want, and I'll share it again around that point, because we want everybody in your area to come out and support that ride and support the local effort for what's being done on the behalf of veterans in Minnesota.
Yes, thank you. And this year we actually have become an official event of HUA, Minnesota. So we're excited about that.
Tell everybody what that is.
And HUA is an organization that HUA stands for Helping Out Our American Heroes, and it's a nonprofit that was started by 3 Rangers that all are from Minnesota, and each come from a different battalion. We have a 1st, a 2nd, and a 3rd. And their idea was to send care packages to Rangers while they were deployed. And they've expanded what they're doing to help Rangers and veterans out in the states where we reside in a number of different ways. And I'm really excited to come on board with HUA and join forces and have the Ben Kopp Memorial Ride be a part of what they do.
Yeah, and that started as a true grassroots effort being paid for out of pocket.
Yes.
And with the intent of, it's hard to send packages to Rangers that are deployed because you don't publish their addresses, and you don't want just anybody sending packages to Rangers that are deployed. So
right.
You get a trusted source, and they've got to kind of understand the things that Rangers want when they're deployed, because if I remember right, when they started off, they probably still do this. They buy out all the local store supply at Copenhagen to put.
Yes, Copenhagen and beef jerky. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Jill, thank you for honoring Memorial Day with us, for letting us continue to honor and remember Ben Kopp. And I look forward to the next time that I see you, and know that we love you, and I'm proud to be your friend.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, Jill. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, let me see here if I can work the miracle of modern technology, if I can hit the right control here on my computer, because I want to go ahead now and pull up. Now, I've got about 6 minutes left, and I really want to play this video from Boone Cutler, because any of you that are still out there that are listening, hang on and watch this, because it's very important. Okay, I have to switch the screen over, which means I have to get to the right window. See, one of these days I'm going to have a producer that's going to be here and that's going to help me. Okay, this very severe looking man in the picture is going to speak to you for a moment.
The Spartan Pledge kind of looks like this, and I'll give you the rundown of how it got started and how popular it's become. Not really popular, just...
And I'm not hearing any sound come through when he's talking there, so this might not work.
I will not take my own life by my own hand.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do here, because I don't see the soundboard moving when I get him to talk, which means you probably are not hearing what he's saying. But like all good Rangers do, I have a backup plan, and that backup plan is to only play the actual audio.
The Spartan Pledge kind of looks like this, and then I'll give you the rundown of how it got started and how popular it's become. Not really popular, just effective. I will not take my own life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first. My mission is to find a mission to help my warfighter family. That's the Spartan Pledge. It's nothing you have to memorize verbatim, but just get the gist of it, and that is, we don't kill ourselves until we talk to our battle buddy. And our mission in life is to have a mission that helps our warfighter family. About 3 years ago when it started between two guys, myself and my battle buddy, Nacho. We were in Iraq together, and we'd lost touch with each other. He called me one night when he was upset because a friend of his had committed suicide. And this guy, if I'm not mistaken, was a police officer at the time, but he was also a warfighter. He was a veteran. And that brought up the subject of suicide between us. And we realized that both of us had spent a lot of time thinking about suicide but not talking about it. And with the suicide rate in America being what it is today with warfighters, it's something that is a definite, relevant subject. Since then, I've taken that pledge with other warfighters, more than I can honestly remember. And now not too many people take that pledge with me because they've gone on to take that pledge with other guys, and it's just permeated throughout the community. Every guy I know that I took that pledge with has taken it with several other guys. It's been put on posters on Facebook and all over the place. And in my opinion, nobody owns it. We all own it. We all own a piece of it. We all have a piece of that, the Spartan Pledge, because it's something that means something. Because we don't trust the doctors. We don't even trust our family members. But we trust our battle buddies. So take that pledge with your battle buddy. And remember, if someone takes that pledge with you, that means you're taking it with them. Me, I'd have to call and contact a lot of people if I was going to off myself. And I would, because I took a pledge. That's the descendants of Sparta. That's what it's all about. That's what the Spartan Pledge is. If we can just do that, we don't need all the other stuff. We take care of ourselves, we take care of our own, and we maintain a mission focus. The Spartan Pledge. That's where it comes from, and you decide where it goes. Contact a battle buddy. Talk to him. Find out that what you realize and what you think is reality is not necessarily reality. We all are going through the same thing in silence. You don't have to sign a paper. You don't have to make a dedication online. It's just a phone call between two guys, two warfighters, male or female. Doesn't matter. I will not take my own life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first. My mission is to find a mission to help my warfighter family. All the way. Make it happen.
Executive Mansion, Washington, November 21st, 1864. Dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Yours, very sincerely and respectfully, A. Lincoln.
This is Charles DeRosa. I'm a veteran of the 75th Ranger Regiment, and you're listening to the New American Veteran on Vets on Media.
Well, I have a surprise guest on Wednesday. Gosh, that turned up kind of loud. Actually, I have two surprise guests. I am not allowed to announce who it is or what we're going to talk about until tomorrow. So watch this back channel tomorrow to find out who it is and what we're going to be talking about. I think you'll like it. It's pretty cool stuff. We are the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. This Memorial Day, USAA salutes those who made the ultimate sacrifice. That beautiful rendition of Taps is a public domain recording created by a soldier or employee of the United States Army and as such is not eligible for copyright protection in the United States. Kenny Thomas' song Send Me is used by permission of Kenny Thomas. All other work or recording is original work or used by permission. This has been a presentation of GallantFew's The New American Veteran on the Vets on Media Global Network.